Diego's Pro Day Thursday in front of reps for 13 NFL teams. Manziel threw 38 pass attempts in front of a reported list of teams that don't have an obvious need at starting quarterback, but for the man they once called Johnny Football, it was a good place to start.
I would sit here today and say that, I'm a different person than I was in the past. I know I've rubbed people the wrong way. I know there's people that, still doubt what I'm doing and still doubt where I'm at, because for me, I've had spurts in the past of being good. I've had spurts in the past of, showing promise and like I'm on the right path, and then right when I think I get there, something else happens. And it's like kind of the pattern that it's been in the past couple years of my life, especially since college. So for me, the key right now is just be consistent. I feel like I've genuinely got a right team around me and the right people around me and a wife that cares about me and loves me enough to save me from myself, because at the end of the day, I feel like that's the only person that I really need saving from.
It's First Take season right now.
13 teams were in San Diego to see Johnny Manziel work out yesterday, so it does bring to mind another quarterback who's seen as having ability, but not on a team in the NFL. So that begs the question, who will be back in the NFL first? Johnny Manziel or Colin Kaepernick? Stephen A?
Johnny Manziel. First of all, my answer would be neither, to be honest with you. But if I had to pick one of the two, it would be Johnny Manziel. And the reason why it would be Johnny Manziel is because Johnny Manziel is a threat to a team in terms of inflicting self-harm. He's not a danger in terms of contaminating the league and sullying the league in such a fashion that it drastically impacts their bottom line, if at all. Last week, approximately 7 or 8 days ago, Colin Kaepernick showed up in Houston to a deposition for Houston Texans owner Bob McNair. If you recall, he is suing the league for collusion, if I remember correctly. He's naming a few owners, executives. All of these people get to be deposed. And Colin Kaepernick, since he's the plaintiff in the case, is allowed to show up for these depositions. He shows up for the deposition wearing a black T-shirt on it with white letters encrypted, Kunta Kinte. Now, for those of you who don't know who Kunta Kinte is, the movie, the show Roots, Alex Haley's Roots, all right? Kunta Kinte was an individual and a slave who repeatedly resisted slavery on the part of an American owner, born in like 1750 at the time. That was what his character was depicted as. So essentially what you have is a situation where Colin Kaepernick is basically treating himself as an enslaved individual. Not somebody who's protesting against police brutality, not somebody who's protesting against racial oppression from a societal perspective. Now he shows up to a deposition against an NFL owner, implying and invoking slavery. You are not coming back into the National Football League when you do that. That is a direct assault on the National Football League and directly alludes to jeopardizing their bottom line. They are not going for that. They'll take a bunch of broke, drunk Johnny Manziels and everybody else in between. They'll take Johnny Manziel, Josh Gordon, and anybody else they find. I'm not implying they're drunk or anything like that. I'm just saying that you could take the worst that you have heard of Johnny Manziel, the worst that you have heard of Josh Gordon, the worst that you have heard about anybody else, and an NFL owner would take one of those guys on their team before they take a player who is trying to invoke slavery aimed in their direction, particularly feeding off of the season that they just had where ratings and revenue were compromised. There is no way that they're going for that with Colin Kaepernick, not as far as I can tell.
I think you bring up a very provocative point there, Stephen A. And I think before I even get to my point, I want to address that. That is one way to look at it. And as we discussed yesterday, whenever someone brings up slavery, not only as an analogy, but even to say that something is the result of the reverberations of slavery, you have to be very careful. You bring up the international slave trade and the institution of slavery or the Holocaust. It can stop thought and discussion. I think another way to look at it, though, is that he's saying that they'll only let me in. For example, like the first thing I think is, you want me to say my name is Toby in order to get in? That's not the way I feel about things. Muhammad Ali went through this when they essentially wanted him to call himself Cassius Clay. And my name is Muhammad Ali. And so that, and by the way, Ali also was driven out of boxing. And then the winds, the winds shifted direction. And suddenly, and I believe that also had an effect on the way the Supreme Court voted on Ali, and certainly the way the public saw him. And suddenly the winds changed, and he was perceived very differently, and he got his license back, and he went on to continue his career as the greatest of all time. Not that Colin Kaepernick is Muhammad Ali, but I do believe if one of them is to be back in the league, in the NFL, it will be Kaepernick before Manziel, because he's better than Johnny Manziel, because Colin Kaepernick has quarterbacked the team to the Super Bowl, because he's clearly and by far the best quarterback who doesn't have a job right now. And everyone's starved for a quarterback, if not as a starter, at least as a backup. And as of right now, you're right. The way things are right now, he's not going to get a job. But who says things will stay that way? Now, when we talk about diversity among ownership in the NFL, the fact of the matter is there are no African-American owners. There are 32 teams. And the biggest correlation between ownership in the NFL is an old white man. I mean, half the population is female. There's a large population in this country that is not white and old, and obviously they all have to be rich to own an NFL team, but they're old white men. And by the way, there's a huge overlap in terms of politics and the way you see the world and your identity in that way, your ethnic identity, particularly among old white men. And so, hold on one second, let me just finish this thought, Stephen A. And so, when you say it's that way now, it doesn't mean it necessarily will always be that way. Our national politics can embolden people's personal preferences. Your idea, Stephen A., and you've brought it up many times in the past, that it's the bottom line that he's affecting. It is unclear whether Kaepernick or the response to Kaepernick is affecting the bottom line more. And so I think the fact that he's not in the league is primarily a result of the personal preferences of the gatekeepers, the owners. And those personal preferences may not be so emboldened if our national politics change. It is an election year, after all.
Stephen A., I know you want to go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I certainly don't feel that way, and I get tired, and I'm not accusing you of doing this, Max, but I think it's important to address the point and the fact that while it doesn't warrant any comparisons to a Muhammad Ali, let's keep in mind that Muhammad Ali had his passport confiscated. They tried to imprison him for years. They did not allow him to work at all because obviously other nations didn't mind supporting Muhammad Ali, but he couldn't leave the country because they took his passport. There were a lot of things that came into the equation. In the case of Colin Kaepernick, you've made over $40 million in your career in the National Football League. The original target of your protest had nothing to do with the NFL. You were talking about our society, and you used the NFL as a platform because you were on the field in uniform when you elected to take a knee during the national anthem. His message was hijacked by the President of the United States. We all know that. We get that, and that part was definitely wrong. But nevertheless, the owners are dealing with the residual impact of the president successfully hijacking that message. And what they're saying is, right or wrong, this is the profound effect that we believe it has had on our product, so we're trying to move away from that. And Colin Kaepernick seems hell-bent on not letting them do it, which means that his target has changed from addressing society to now addressing the National Football League. And the National Football League, in my opinion, is going to push back, which is why he's not going to get back in.
Off that, Stephen A., I only have like a minute left. I want to ask you a quick question. By the way, what you guys are illustrating, and Max, I'm not saying you're doing this, it's the limitation of analogies, right? They can be helpful, but when you analogize things to Muhammad Ali or to slavery.
And quickly, Will, I just want to say Ali, I want to make very clear, I just mean in terms of the way public perception shifted about Ali as politics shifted.
And Max, look, analogies aren't useless, they're helpful, so that's not the accusation. And by the way, you're both just doing a cost-benefit analysis. The benefit of Kaepernick's higher, but the cost is higher as well. The answer I gather from both of you is neither is going to be in the NFL. Last quick, small question, Stephen A. Do you think Cap even wants to be back in the NFL? You wear a shirt like that. Is he retaining any hope or expectation to be in the NFL?
I think that he loves the fact that he has been martyred. And he's more preoccupied with that than being an NFL quarterback. I'm not saying he doesn't want to be an NFL quarterback. I'm saying that that doesn't appear to be his priority more than being martyred for the position that he's taken. He's enjoying this.
All right, great discussion. Still to come, Steph Curry. It's looking like he's going to be able to try to lace him up tonight, even though he's not 100%. But will this end up being a big mistake? Plus, with so many low seeds already making the Elite Eight, does the NCAA tournament need Duke to advance to keep the viewers' interest? We'll have a Dookie jump in here. Jay Williams joins us next.
I'm not this way because I'm on camera. I'm on camera because I'm this way.
I'm glad you left this for me, Stephen A.
The dude